Popping corks. If you are new to inshore fishing and you're looking for pretty much a surefire way to put fish in the boat, this is about as close to a guarantee as you can get when it comes to inshore fishing. Now, it doesn't matter if you're fishing all the way down in South Texas or up in Virginia and any point in between. These are known to put fish in the boat anywhere. Matter of fact, captains, local guides and captains commonly refer to these as tourist rigs because they can put a popping cork in somebody's hand that's never been fishing before and put fish in the boat. So what I'm going to do in this video is we're going to talk about the popping cork, we're going to talk about different styles, how to rig it up, the equipment, what you're going to use underneath it, and how to actually retrieve it. So if you ever had any questions about a popping cork, this video is for you. So let's get right into it. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Pat from Salt Strong, and if you are unfamiliar with what a popping cork is a device that is like a float. It is a float that helps keep your bait off of the bottom, but it's got an added feature of a little slider that goes inside of it, and when you give it a twitch, it actually makes a noise that sounds like feeding fish, and that will attract the predators to it. So not only does it keep your bait off of the bottom, it also attracts those fish. Now there's two different main styles. This is what's called a cup style. This is the Dr. Popper that we sell here at Salt Strong. As you can see, it's got a cup face on it, and then the other style is this one. This is called an oval style. Now some will say that one will catch different types of fish than the other. Some will tell you that the trout like this one and the redfish like this one, but I've caught both fish on either one of these, so I don't know if that's necessarily true. But one thing I will tell you for sure, I will use these in different conditions. If it is slick calm like it is today, we've got bluebird skies, we've got no wind, I'm going to use this one because it doesn't make as much noise. But if it's a little bit choppy out there, the wind is up and you've got some waves out there, then I'm going to use that cup face to make some extra noise to be able to amplify that sound over the sound of the waves so the fish can find these a little bit easier. So I think application is the difference and not necessarily the types of fish that you're after. Okay, we talked a little bit about the popping corks. Now let's talk about the equipment that we're going to use to throw these. So what I recommend always is a spinning reel. The bait casting reels, it can be really, really difficult unless you have it dialed in. So spinning reels is going to be the easiest, especially for beginners. Now the rod itself, I recommend a 7.5 foot medium power with a fast action. And that's going to have enough backbone to be able to cast that lure out there, to cast the popping cork out there, and then work it properly. You can use a medium heavy. You can go up in power if you want, but definitely don't go down in power. We don't want to use a medium light, so at least a medium, that's what I recommend, or a medium heavy. The reel, a 2500 or a 3000 sized reel, that's all you need. A lot of people will oversize these and they put too big a reel on there, and when you're working this popping cork, it's actually, you know, it can be a workout. So we want to make this setup as light as possible. A 2500 size reel is going to have plenty of power for any of these inshore fish that we're fishing for. So, you know, the lighter that you go, the better it's going to be at the end of the day. And the line, we recommend either 10 or 15 pound braided line for your inshore setups. That's what we use at Salt Strong on all our inshore setups, is the braided line. And that's my setup for popping corks. It's really the same setup as I do for most of my inshore fishing. Now the rod that I'm using is our Salt Strong Slam Stick, and the reason why I use this one for popping corks, it's got a little bit more backbone so it can handle the extra weight of that popping cork plus the lure. But that's my favorite rod that I've been using for popping corks lately. Now let's talk about the actual popping cork rig setup itself and how we attach it to the line. So if you are using braid like we recommend, what I recommend to do when it comes to connecting it to your popping cork is use a short length of stiff leader material. 30 or 40 pound works great. This happens to be 30, but the reason why we want to do that with that braided line, if you attach the braid directly to your popping cork, when you're working that popping cork, what happens is you can get that braid that'll wrap around the tip. This stiff part of the leader itself will keep that braid away from it. You're not going to have a problem with it. Now the knots that I use an FG knot to connect my braid to my leader, and then from the leader to the popping cork, that's going to be a snug knot. So whatever you're comfortable with, could be a uni knot, could be a trilene knot, anything that you can tie really well, that's going to be your best setup. But we want snug knots on the end of this. Now when it comes to the popping cork, this is the Dr. Popper. It's got that cup face on there, and as far as the colors go, the color is for the angler, so you can see it from a distance. I really haven't noticed a difference between catch rates between one color or the other, but I will say the further you let this thing go out there, the further you can cast it, those brighter colors do help you see it from a long distance. So that's why you see a lot of popping corks that are, you know, chartreuse like this, or they're orange, they're bright, so you can see them from a long distance away. Now beneath that popping cork, what I'm going to do a lot of times with my popping corks is I'm going to be setting this up for trout and slot sized redfish, so I don't need heavy leader material. That's a mistake that a lot of people do. They'll oversize their leader. They'll put 30 or 40 pound leader, and what happens is that can spook the fish off. So I'm only using either 15 or 20 pound. That's plenty strong for these slot size trout and these slot size redfish. And the smaller your leader, as far as the diameter goes, the more strikes that you're going to get. Now, if you're fishing for oversized fish, you're fishing for over slot reds, or you're fishing in heavy current for bigger fish, then you want to go bigger. You want to go to that 30 to 40 pound. And also, even on your equipment, you'll probably use a stronger rod and reel than what I've talked about earlier. But typically what we're looking for is we're looking for those slot size fish that we can take home for dinner. So your 15 to 20 pound leader is plenty strong enough. Now, my connections are going to be a snug knot on this end. Again, it could be that uni knot, that trilene knot, whichever you feel comfortable tying. And then on the end of this one, when I'm going to connect my jig head, I'm going to use a loop knot. And the reason why I'm going to use a loop knot is because that loop knot is actually a little bit weaker than the rest of these knots. So if I get snagged and I got to break my rig off, the only thing I'm going to lose is my jig head and my lure. The rest of this is going to come back with me because that is your weakest connection. And that's why I use a loop knot on the bottom. Now, I'm going to use a 1/4 ounce jig head on this. You can use an 1/8 ounce, but I think a 1/4 ounce is probably your best all-around weight. It's going to get you the best action, and it's going to keep that lure moving rather quickly and get down underneath. So 1/4 ounce is where I recommend. Once you get more advanced with your popping corks, then you can start trying different weights, but stick with that 1/4 ounce. And I'm also going to use an open jig head. I'm not going to use anything weedless because we've got quite a bit of line that is a little bit loose. So whenever you get that strike, you want to have something that's going to have an open jig head on it so you get that better hookup ratio. If it's weedless, you're going to miss a lot of fish. So an open jig head is going to be your best setup. Now, when it comes to the lure, the live bait that you're going to put underneath it, you can use anything, but shrimp is going to be the best. Shrimp will catch anything out there. Or if you're going to use an artificial setup, then I like using a shrimp imitation. Now, you can use a paddle tail as far as lures, a paddle tail, a swim bait, or even if it's a live bait, you can put live minnows under there. So whether it be a mud minnow, whether it be a greenie, or whether it be a threadfin, anything like that, you can put under the bottom of these and that will catch fish. But in the beginning, whenever you're first starting out, I definitely recommend staying with that shrimp imitation because everything eats a shrimp. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to cast this out and how we're going to work this popping cork. Okay, so let's set up the distance. I like having about this much distance between the tip of the rod and the actual popping cork. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to get a nice decent cast without having a whole lot of helicoptering. Now what we're going to do with our back cast is we are going to do more of a lob type cast. It's not going to be like a quick whip or anything like that like you do with a standard lure. We're just going to lob this thing out there. So we're going to go here on our back cast and then we're just going to gently lob it out right there. And if you notice when it was flying through the air, I didn't get a whole lot of helicoptering. It was pretty much straight. And that's what you want to accomplish. When you start getting those helicopters, your rig's going to tangle up midair before it even hits the water. So after it hits the water, I'm going to let it settle down a little bit. And then first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it 2 quick pops. Just like that. And then I'm going to let it sit. Now the amount of time that I'm going to let it sit is going to be dependent on the mood of the fish. So if you notice, it's super calm out here. There's nothing going on. So I'm going to let that sit for quite a bit of time, maybe 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. And then I'm going to give it a couple of other pops. So a couple more pops just like that, and I'm going to repeat this process. Now when it comes to figuring out the amount of pops, the amount of weight and all that, really let the fish tell you. So if they're feeding aggressively, you can give it more pops and give it less time in between your pops. So maybe you can pop it 2 times, let it sit for 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, give it a couple more pops. And if those fish are feeding aggressively, what they're going to do is they're going to find that. But if they're not feeding aggressively, working the lure too hard, working that cork too hard can actually scare them off. So what you want to do is just give them enough pops to mimic that sound of the feeding fish. And other predatory fish can't stand it when fish are feeding around them. They think they're missing out on a meal. So what they're going to do is they're going to come investigate it. So you want to give it just enough pops and give it just enough action to call those fish in. Now another thing when it comes to how hard you're going to pop this, again, it's going to have a lot to do with what's going on around you. Because it's flat calm out here, I'm not going to pop it very hard. So I'm just going to give it just a pop like this. Now if it's windy and we've got some choppiness out there and we've got to overcome that and we've got to really attract attention to our lure, then you can pop it really hard. You can give it some really good pops like that. And a lot of times whenever there's a lot of commotion going on, if there's a lot of feeding activity and a lot of bait, that's what you have to do. But match how hard you're going to pop that cork to the conditions that are around you. Okay, so I'm going to show you this again. I've got the same amount of distance that we got from between our cork and the rod tip. We're going to bring it back. We're going to load this up and then we're just going to let it fly. Notice it didn't have a whole lot of helicoptering, and then it's going to hit the the water, and then we can repeat this process. Now again, we're going to vary the amount of pops and how hard those pops are going to be, and those lengths of those pauses in between the pops, depending on what the fish want. So each time that you cast out there, until you figure out what they want, you want to vary that up. Maybe start out with a 5-second pause, then move up to a 10-second pause, and a 15-second pause, maybe 1 pop, maybe 2 pops, and just keep varying that up, and you're going to find a little combination that they want at that particular moment. Okay, so I want to run down the setup again. The rod is going to be a 7.5 foot medium power fast action. This happens to be our slam stick that's made by Salt Strong. That's been my favorite one so far to use with the popping corks. The reel is going to be a 2500 size. That's all you need for these slot size fish. This happens to be the Otis 2500. The line is going to be 10 pound or 15 pound. I use 10. This is Daiwa J braid. The popping cork is going to be, this is our Dr. Popper. There's a lot of different ones out there, but the Dr. Popper's got the unique thing where it's got monofilament inside of it, so it doesn't kink up. So if you were to ever get it stuck on something, that monofilament is not going to kink and bend and then ruin the whole thing. So there's an advantage to that. You can have a little thicker leader material. That's going to be your 30 to 40 pound. That's going to connect from your braid to your lure with a snug knot, and then from your popping cork down to your jig head, that's going to be your 15 to 20 pound monofilament leader. Remember, the lighter the leader, the better the strikes you're going to get, the more strikes you're going to get. That's why I recommend going down with it and not going to heavy duty stuff unless you're after some big fish. The jig head on the bottom, this is a round-eyed jig head that is 1/4 ounce, and then this lure is the Prawn Junior. Now this is for your slot size setup, so if you're trying to put fish on the plate for dinner, that's what I recommend. Now if you're going after trophies, if you're going after those large bull redfish, then I do recommend going up in gear. You're going to use at least a medium heavy rod. You're going to want either a 3,000, maybe even a 4,000 sized reel, 20 pound braid, and I'm going to use 30 pound leader material in front of the cork and underneath the cork. But that's only if you're going after the trophies. If you want to catch more fish, go with the lighter leader material. You're going to get more bites that way. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about when you should use it and when you shouldn't use it. So my favorite time to use these popping corks is whenever the wind is up. There's a little bit of chop on the water, the fish are feeding actively, and that's going to be the best time because that popping cork really does a good job of making that noise and drawing those fish in. Now, when I really don't like using popping corks, or when I don't use popping corks, I should say, it's going to be basically the conditions where I was making this video in, where it's slick calm out there. Sometimes when it's slick calm and you've got some shallow water, and especially if it's clear, these fish can be spooky, and that popping cork can actually make too much noise and spook them off. So there is a time that you should use them and time that you shouldn't use them, but again, my favorite time is going to be whenever that wind is up. So this is going to be Popping Cork 101. I hope you liked the video, but before I leave you, I do have a question. Now, I know we have a bunch of different skill levels and experience levels that are watching this video, and I would love to hear from you. What is the strangest thing that you commonly put underneath a popping cork that you catch fish on? Leave a comment down below. Now, if you're looking for any of the gear that was featured in this video, we do have it available at fishstrong.com. So any rods, reels, popping corks, or any lures that you're going to use underneath them, make sure and check that out. And remember, insiders do get a huge discount off a tackle at fishstrong.com. So I hope this video was helpful for you. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put those down below, and I'll try to answer them as soon as I can. As always, I really appreciate you watching, and I hope your next trip out there is going to be a great one. Bye.